Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the MCDFNL Footy Show for another week. Great to be joining you once again with finals on the horizon now in the MCDFNL. Every game seems to be that much more important. Shaun Kelly's my name, in the host chair as always. Sitting next to me isn't Sam Gowers. He's just decided just not to even bother with this week. He's thought he's going all right at the Addy at the moment. He's just swimming along on top of the pack, so he thought that just don't need to come in this week. We can see how the show goes without me. It's going to be a ratings hit because with us is the operations manager of the MCDFNL, Jake Dunne. Jake, thanks for joining us, mate.
No worries, Shaunie. Good to be here, mate. Big shoes to fill with Sammy.
Not really.
Oh, I think so, mate. So we'll see how we go.
We will indeed. I'm telling you, this could be interesting throughout the course of the next 10 minutes or so. Talking points from the weekend, starting out at Campbell's Creek. Last week it was a 1-point win over Trentham. This week they filled in the Maryborough Rovers, did a fantastic job, got well and truly over the line, and all of a sudden, they've got themselves into a point where a couple of weeks ago you weren't even thinking about Campbell's Creek for finals. But now with the way that the ladder's going, they're a sneaky chance if they can keep this form up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've given themselves a chance to be mathematically possible to play finals from here on in. And I guess they're a part of the conversation now for that probably 7th, 8th spot that so many teams are fighting out for.
Apart from this week, they've got Navarre this week, which is going to do them no favours at all. They've got games that, on current form, would be winnable for them. They've got Malden in the first half of the split round. Then they've got Talbot at Talbot, which will be difficult, but on their form, they'll think they can win it. And then Newstead at home in the last game. If they can pull off 6 wins, we know that 6 wins has got you into finals in previous years, and they're feasting on a couple of teams above them in that mix as well. So they could do themselves some favours. If they can keep in this form, they're half a chance.
Absolutely, and I think it's always a positive for a club in their position as well. Down the bottom of the ladder, sort of at the moment, but they're a chance to play finals, and there's certainly some positives on the horizon.
Liam Stubbing, 7 goals on the weekend. Great to see for Campbell's Creek.
Yeah, super performance from him, and hitting the scoreboard and being a focal point up forward.
Speaking of goals was the order of the day on Sunday out at the Bill Woodfull Reserve in Malden. They took on Trentham. 40 goals kicked across this game for the day, which we've seen against Malden this year, I suppose, being a little bit mischievous. We've seen that amount of goals kicked in games against Malden, but this time, 22 goals one way, 18 goals the other. Trentham won the game, but only by 17 points, and 22 goals 8 to 18-15. A great display of footy.
Yeah, it would have been a great game to have been at, and certainly one for the spectators, and it's great to see Malden hitting the scoreboard in such a heavy fashion and creating that spectacle for the fans.
That's their high point of the season, Malden. Obviously, didn't get the win, but they'll take that, and obviously, again, that's some form that they can take into some current weeks. Again, they've got no favours this week because they've got Royal Park this week, but they'll see that game against Campbell's Creek as a potential chance to get that first win on the board.
Yeah, absolutely, and they'll take plenty of positives from the weekend and being ultra competitive with a side that has competed with the best in the competition. Trentham have pushed Navarre along the way and really been quite a competitive side this year, so Malden can certainly take a lot out of that performance on the weekend.
They can indeed. What that's done for the ladder now, Campbell's Creek, as we mentioned, they're not far away. They're 2 games behind the 8th place at the moment. Their percentage needs a bit of work, but they're sitting second last on the ladder, so there's a nice big pack there. Trentham were the main beneficiaries of the weekend because now they've moved into 9th spot. They're a game outside that top 8 still, but their percentage is better than Denali's, and if they can get a couple on the way home, then Trentham well and truly still in the mix.
Absolutely, and as I just touched on, they've been ultra competitive this year. They've probably been hurt a little bit by injuries, and that's probably restricted their ability to get their best side on the park week in, week out. But if Trentham can sneak into that final 8, I'm sure there'll be plenty of teams looking over their shoulder.
As you can see on the screen at the moment, the ladder, 6 teams just about locked in. You'd think that Talbot and Lexington are pretty safe with 7 wins on the board already and probably another couple to go before the season's finished. Leaves 7th and 8th spots still open, and as we can see, it goes all the way down to the Maryborough Rovers in 11th, but you could say down to 13th with the form that Campbell's Creek's in at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the best part about the competition at the moment is the even spread between probably 3rd, 4th, 5th, all the way down to 13th, and it creates for an exciting run home, an exciting finals campaign.
Certainly means that just about every game is live on the way home, as we'll find out this week in round 13 with a couple of pretty important games coming up. Starting with the game at Jubilee Oval between the Maryborough Rovers and Avoca. The Rovers need this one desperately to get themselves back into the hunt.
Absolutely. Rivers need to bounce back here, and there's no mistake about that. I think the Rivers have been pretty up and down all season. It's hard to get a gauge on where they're actually at. I know they're quite a young and inexperienced side. I expect them to win this weekend and to get back on the winners list and do it well.
I expect them to win, but I don't expect them to do it easily because Evoca's one of those sides that if they're on and they can get a team napping like this, then they can take advantage of it. They do play very well once they're in front. It's just getting in front's been the big thing. Obviously, they've had their problems throughout the year, Evoca. They've had the coaching change during the year. They've got a very, very young side. But if they get a sniff, they're a team that they've got a lot of experienced footballers in there as well that have played in these situations and know exactly what to do when they get in front. So if the Rovers give them a sniff, it's a dangerous time for them.
Yeah, it is a dangerous time for them. I think it's an old-fashioned 8-point game, this one as well. I think the winner puts themselves in a great position to be a part of September action.
Maryborough Rovers for me in this one, but only just. Yourself?
Yeah, Rovers for mine. I think they'll do it by about 5 or 6 goals.
Campbell's Creek taking on Navarre this weekend, and we talked about Campbell's Creek before, and you can have as great a run of form as you like, but all of a sudden you're going to smack into one of these big teams, and that's what Campbell's Creek's going to do this weekend. Tough ask for them against one of the form teams in the comp.
Massive ask for them going up against Navarre. I think they'll be looking for competitiveness and effort this weekend, and they'll be hoping that can then lead to a result. I think Navarre are going to start to really build towards finals now and put their foot down a little bit. So I can't see Campbell's Creek overcoming them. In saying that, I think it'll probably be a competitive, ultra competitive first half of footy before Navarre run away with it.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that one. Navarre, the second half specialists at the moment. Interesting game coming up at Talbot this week. Talbot taking on Carisbrook at, obviously, the Talbot Rec Reserve. This will tell us a bit more about where Talbot's at. I think obviously sitting in 5th at the moment. They've done a very good job this year, but they haven't beaten a team above them, as is very hard to do this year. They've run a couple of them fairly closely, but running them fairly closely doesn't get you into a second or a third week of the finals. Talbot need to show us something this weekend that they're going to go into the finals, and they may get through the first week, but if they can get through that second week, then they're really going to make an impact this season.
Yeah, I think Talbot have been building over the last couple of weeks, and we see with their result last week against Royal Park, where they really pushed Royal Park, who are obviously the team to beat so far this year, and I think they can take it up to Carisbrook. They do need a scalp.
They do,
as you touched on, and they need that for belief's sake as well as getting another win on the board. So I probably can't see them knocking over Carisbrook this week, but I think it'll be probably one of the best games this round.
Carisbrook, a few players out last week, but still managed to get the job done fairly comfortably against Evoca. Just shows the strength in the Redbacks lineup this year.
Yeah, I think the Redbacks have a lot of depth this year. I think that their depth is almost second to none. So if they can get a full strength side on the park, they'll feature quite prominently come the pointy end of the season.
You mentioned the term 8-point game before. It applies in spades to this next one. Trentham taking on Dunne at the Trentham Reserve. 8th on the ladder versus 9th. We've spoken about Trentham already. Dunne got wiped last week against Navarre. They're not Robinson Crusoe in that regard, but they're another team that's been up and down a little bit this year, and travelling out to Trentham is never a fun trip for most opposition sides. They need to be on their game this week, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Dunne are in a similar position to Maryborough Rovers, where they're really hard to get a gauge of where they're at. I think that trip to Trentham has troubled a lot of teams this year, and we see Trentham play their home ground pretty well, and obviously, as I touched on earlier, really push Navarre there. So I think Trentham will get the job done this weekend and jump into the 8.
Trentham are in this game, you're dead right. They go into the 8. Dunne win this game, they go 2 games ahead of Trentham, and that is so key at this time of year. Can Dunne do? Depends on what. I'm loath to tip them because I don't know which Dunne is going to show up. We've seen Dunne play some cracking games this year, but we've seen them drop off the pace a little bit as well. And same with Trentham. They haven't been convincing at all, so it's hard to tip this game. You almost just have to go for home ground advantage.
Yeah, and I think that's probably what might get them over the line in the end. In saying that, the likes of Laird and Cook for Dunne are sure to put on a fair show. So it's going to be an interesting game this weekend for sure. Lexington
taking on Newstead at Lexington this weekend. Another 8-point game as well, because this is 6th versus 7th, and this could potentially be an elimination final matchup between these two sides. And both sides have had their ups and downs this year, but I'm tipping this to be one of the matches of the round.
I think this will be a cracker. I think Matt Brown's got his boys on the right track now after a slow start to the year, and he's certainly playing some pretty good footy himself. So I think the Lexington boys will be going into this full of confidence. In saying that, Newstead, last week through the kitchen sink at Natty and really pushed them as well.
Nearly got there.
Yeah, nearly got there as well. So match of the round, definitely for mine. I'm tipping Newstead, but only by under 10 points.
It's exactly the same. I just think that Newstead's in that little bit better form at the moment. As you said, pushed Natty last week and absolutely destroyed Malden the week before with goal kickers coming from everywhere. So I just think Newstead will get over the line here. Natty Bialama taking on Harcourt at the Natty Yallock Rec Reserve. Natty have had a tough few weeks. I'll be looking forward to this game against, again, though, a Harcourt team that you don't know which one's going to show up. They're another team that's been up and down this year, and they're in that mix at the moment. They're sitting in 10th spot. They need to get this win to keep themselves in that mix for the top 8, but I just can't see it.
Yeah, I probably can't see it as well. I think Natty are, obviously, they're a top 4 side in the comp at the moment, and they play that well. They had a pretty tough middle part to their fixture this year. And I think they'll certainly get over the top of Harcourt this weekend. They've got a lot of class across the board. Harcourt, they're in a position where they're probably relying on other teams to lose if they lose this game. So it's such a big game for their season.
Yeah.
But Natty for me.
Natty for mine as well. Last match for the round, Malden taking on Royal Park. I tell you, Malden, they can't catch a break, can they? They have a game like last week where they were fantastic. They kicked 18 goals, which was their highest score for the season by far. Take some momentum into the next week, and you come up against the undefeated team that's absolutely pacing the league at the moment and just looking more and more like a legitimate premiership contender every day. It's going to be tough for Malden to get anywhere near Royal Park this week, I think.
Yeah, I think they're certainly up against it. As we sort of touched on earlier with a couple of other teams, it's going to come down to their effort and intensity against a side which is renowned for their effort and intensity. Royal Park really bringing that every single week, and they're playing a relentless brand of footy. So I don't see Malden troubling Royal Park at all, to be honest with you, and I think Royal Park will get the job done quite
May come out full of bubble early on, obviously taking that momentum from last week into that first quarter, but Royal Park, with their skill, with that precision kicking game they play this year, I think we'll be able to stuff them out fairly early on and go on to a fairly comfortable win. That's all the time we've got for the MCDFNL Footy Show this week. Jake, it's been a pleasure having you in here. I reckon not only have you filled the shoes of Sam Gowers this week, you may have put his spot in jeopardy.
Oh, I don't know about that, Shaun. It's good to be here today with you and to be in Sammy's shoes, but I think he can have the role back next week, and he does a much better job than myself.
I don't know about that. I think you've made more sense in one show than he's made for the last 2 years, so going along very nice. It's been great having you, mate. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Shawnee.
Thank you for joining us as well on the MCDFNL Footy Show. We'll be back next week with the first of our split round editions of the Footy Show. We might have a look at what a couple of teams need to do to get themselves into that top 8 mix next week. Stay tuned for that one. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next week.